You're watching Free Press Journal. I'm Afrida Rahman Ali. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order imposing an additional 25% tariff on all Indian goods entering the United States, carrying out his threat just made a day ago to penalize New Delhi for continued purchase of Russian oil. Total quantum of tariff goes up to 50%. The additional 25% is due to take effect on the 27th of August. It puts India at par with Brazil as the two countries whose exports will now face a levy of 50% on their goods. The duties would obviously put Indian exporters at a significant disadvantage compared to their rivals in Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Vietnam, which face tariffs between 19 and 20%. To speak more about this, I have with me Mr. Achyut Godbole, who is an Indian chemical engineer. He's a former IT industry leader, a writer, a graduate from IIT Bombay, who has been observing the latest announcements and is going to talk to us about its impact on the Indian economy, on the export of goods, on the Indian markets, and how this affects our lives. Welcome to Free Press Journal, Mr. Godbole. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us today.
Thank you.
Let me begin by asking you your first observation when you hear something of this nature. 25%, many would say, was bad enough, and now this additional penalty, as it were, on India as a punishment, so to speak, of another 25%, making it all the way to 50% now of tariffs at par with Brazil and highest among all exporting countries to US.
Yeah, I think it is absolutely crazy. I mean, 50% is, unthinkable. And I think Trump, as we know, is very whimsical. And, tomorrow he may cancel, tomorrow he may add to the tariffs. I mean, he can do whatever. And the double standards have been exposed by many people. I mean, he imports a lot of things from Russia. America imports a lot of things from Russia. So does EU. But I think United States is not punishing those countries. And so when asked a question, he actually avoided answering that question. Anyway, the impact of this is going to be not very good on India. Luckily, only 2% of our GDP is actually based on exports. Okay, so to the US, and I think the total exports to the US is around 87 billion US dollars. But the duty of 50% is much higher than most other countries. For instance, China is 20%, Pakistan is 10%, UAE is 10%, Ecuador is 10%, Indonesia is 19%, Vietnam is 20%. So basically it is very high, and it's going to put our exports to enormous amount of competitive disadvantage. So the industries that are likely to be jeopardized or in fact affected are textiles, the diamonds and jewelry, the petrochemicals, chemicals, engineering, pharma. Luckily, I'm told has been spared up to now. But if pharma also is affected, then it will be an extremely bad kind of. Then metals, then marine, the fishery, for instance. So all these are affected. For instance, the engineering exports are 12.33 billion. Electronics is 6.79 billion. Pharma is 6.34 billion. Fisheries is 7 billion. Metals is 7.5. Jewelry is 6.28 billion. You see, the point is that in most of these industries, export-oriented industries, they are actually they employ a lot of people. So they're not, capital intensive. Many are labor intensive. Take fishery, for instance. Fishery, there are very small fishermen, and there are, lakhs of fishermen who are actually employed or have employment due to the fisheries exports. And I think that is going to be hit. Diamonds, for instance, 80% of our diamonds are exported to America. And diamonds employs around 40 lakh people directly or indirectly. Out of which 15 lakh are direct, and only Surat, for instance, employs 8 lakh people in diamonds. So I think the employment situation is going to be not very rosy, not very good. The growth prospects are, the growth will be reduced by around 1% according to Bloomberg, and if pharma is also included, tomorrow Trump comes up with pharma, then it can go up to 1.1, 1.2% of GDP. You know, that's not very small number. So the total impact is going to be, you know, on employment, on GDP, on stock market, on just about everything. And I think it's not going to be very easy. The point is, what are the alternatives? The alternatives is if Modi government sort of, you know, agrees to Trump's terms and sort of avoids buying oil from Russia, then I mean, it's going to be very bad, because buying oil from America is going to be very expensive.
Yeah,
The other thing is,
let me put in terms of the alternative, since you mentioned. Apparently, there is the way this works is that either India can halt oil purchases from Russia and give in to the US demand, or it could concede to the agri and soybean access that US has been asking for. It is possible that India will probably continue with the oil purchase rather than agree to US terms, considering that alternative is not as lucrative for India. Would you agree?
yeah, I think, you know, both are. I mean, I was going to come to that. But if India opens up agriculture, soybean is just one. I mean, but if other goods are also opened up, then I think our agricultural markets will be completely. I mean, our peasants, our farmers will be put to an enormous amount of disadvantage. So I think that will be very harmful. I mean, they're not getting, even today, they're not getting MSP. So if American markets are sort of coming into India, then the farmers will be, will have a very, very tough time. So both the options, either not buying from Russia, the Russian oil, and opening agricultural markets to America, both the options are not very good. So I think, the government is sort of faced with choosing which is the least least
lesser
bothersome.
evil.
So I think it's going to be very bad, in my opinion. And who knows, tomorrow Trump may actually increase the tariff on pharma.
Yeah, but there are some important exemptions. So, let's make it very clear. You already mentioned that pharma is exempt, pharmaceuticals and smartphones, though how long these exemptions will remain is also unclear. The order as of now exempts goods that are already in transit to America, which will clear US customs before 17th of September. So that obviously is exempt. But clearly the move places India amongst the most heavily taxed US trading partners.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the tariffs are going to make Indian goods. Yeah, it's going to make Indian goods far more costlier in the US. That's what basically it means. And it can cut exports to what extent? Now there comes the question. To what extent do you believe that exports to US will reduce and we will find other trading partners to offset, this whole impact? To what extent
I
will that
believe
be
that
possible?
I completely agree with you. But I think that India, we should have worked on that for quite a few years. I mean, for instance, BRICS. There is always a politics about US versus BRICS going on right now. China being the most leading sort of partner of BRICS. And I think it is very important that we develop trade ties with the countries apart from US. If we do that, then, and if we had done that for a long time, then we would have probably saved this situation. But I think even today, I think we should not be bullied by America. We should, in fact, strengthen our ties with BRICS. I think that's probably the reason why Mr. Modi is going for a CO meeting, in my opinion. Also,
on the
Mr.
31st
Doval is
of
in
August.
Russia and so on. I think I welcome that step, because I think being bullied by the United States is not very, very good politically, economically, and even culturally. I mean, this is not good. I mean, this guy is completely unpredictable. And I think we should definitely strengthen those ties and reduce our risk.
Right. In final analysis, when you look at the current, sequence of events, would you concede that this also means, beyond the economics of it all, geopolitically, this is such a bad move? It puts the India-US relations under so much strain now.
Absolutely.
Will that also have an overall impact? I mean, everything has a ripple effect, right? The fact that India, US are now in this sort of a juncture where there are hostilities in a way is also bad news, you feel?
Yeah, it is absolutely bad news. And I think India-US ties are very important, in my opinion. But I personally think that America is a declining empire. I mean, after the Second World War, America was a completely unchallenged world leader of the whole world. It actually provided money to Europe through Marshall Plan, and also, through various other means. The funny thing is, all these tariffs were actually agreed upon in WTO, and America was actually the main partner and main leader in WTO. Now Trump is completely going against WTO. So I think it's absolutely ironical. And I personally believe that we should definitely increase our ties with BRICS, and it's a rope walk. I mean, how to maintain good relations with America and also enter into BRICS, because Trump is also threatening that if you de-dollarize, or if you sort of increase your trade with BRICS, I'll increase your duty to 100%. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Also, the fact is that it simply doesn't add up, the argument about Russia. I mean, that way you should be punishing the European nations much more.
Absolutely.
Or
double
equally,
standards.
at the
Double
least, Yes, because there are imports of Russian energy especially LNG by European Union member states. They've paid Russia over upwards of $100 billion for gas imports, right? Since the start of the invasion of
also
Ukraine.
America itself buys a lot of things from Russia. That's something that was pointed out by
which is why it forces you to question then why this sudden hostility towards
I think
India.
It's
simply bullying tactics. It is simply arm twisting and bullying tactics to fall in line, nothing else. It's just something that is being asserted as if you're the big boss and you better fall in line, right? It's just an empty threat.
But I think there's more than what meets the eye. I think, it could be when Mr. Modi visited the United States, he did not sort of meet Mr. Trump when he had invited him. And I mean, there are multiple reasons. I mean, there are various sort of conjectures being sort of talked about. Some big companies are being targeted in America, and, that will affect India and so on. I mean, I don't know what is true, but there's certainly something more than that, because India is being singled out. If you notice, as I read out the taxes on most of the other countries are, as you rightly said in the beginning, from 15 to 20%, whatever, and India is 50%. I mean, so I personally feel that India should find a way out through negotiations and not take a very tough stand. So it's a rope walk. I don't know how we'll come out of this.
Yes, and as you rightly said, a very highly fragile ego is also involved in taking these decisions. But just for our viewers, let's be clear, product categories like apparels, vehicles and parts, furniture, organic chemicals, some food products like shrimp, which account for billions of dollars of exports, will now face higher tariffs. It's supposed to come into effect from 27th of August. Mr. Achyut Godbole, thank you so much for helping us understand this topic, for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. Thanks very much.